Welcome friends to this session on Eugene O'Neill, one of the greatest American playwrights of all time. Eugene O'Neill, who lived between 1888 and 1953, he established America's place in the realm of literary drama by introducing dramatic realism and psychological focus to theatre. So, today we are going to analyze or rather look at some of his major works, his early life of course, and the kinds of influences he had on his dramaturgy and his contribution towards American drama, especially in the 20th century. Now, we are going to soon do his Desire Under the Elms. So, I thought it appropriate to have a brief introduction to O'Neill's plays. Remember, he was the first American playwright to regard the stage as a literary medium and the only American playwright ever, and this is important, to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature. So, the only American playwright ever, not the only American writer. You know that even Hemingway won the Nobel for Literature, but we are talking about Nobel for the dramatist who won the Nobel for Literature. Hemingway was born in 1888 in New York City, and you will find the influences of the New York dialects and the New York way of life in his plays. He was interestingly born in a Broadway hotel room, and he died there as well. It's very ironic. His father, James O'Neill Sr., was a successful Shakespearean actor who left literary theatre for a more profitable lead role in the adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo. He was known for being the Count of Monte Cristo. He did the performance so many times. So, if you read his Long Day Journey into Night, you will understand it's the play is regarded as one of the greatest plays ever written in America, and it's heavily autobiographical in its tone. O'Neill's mother Ella, she accompanied her husband across the country. Unfortunately, she got addicted to morphine, which began at Eugene's birth, and this was to impact his art in the later period, the influences he had. You know, they traveled a lot. At the same time, it was a rather troubled family background, a rather dysfunctional family, and all these had a profound influence on the way he on his plays. Now, he spent much of his early childhood touring with theatrical companies with his mother and older brother Jamie. The only stable residence they had was the house in New London in Connecticut, where they stayed in summers. He spent his early years in hotel rooms, on trains and backstage of the theatre companies. About his education, he spent 6 years in a Catholic boarding school and 3 years in the Betts Academy at Stamford, Connecticut. After attending a series of Catholic and non-sectarian boarding schools, he attended the Princeton University in 1906, and he made little effort to study the required curriculum, though he was widely read. He completely got absorbed in the works of Nietzsche and Strindberg, and also Jack London, and all these writers, they had a very profound influence on his writing. However, he was suspended in the end of his freshman year and decided not to go back to the university. He also decided to begin what he later regarded as his real education, quote unquote, that is his life experience. So, thereafter he took up many small jobs. He became the secretary of a small jewelry house in New York, but very soon he left it, and he then joined a gold prospecting expedition in Spanish Honduras, but after having contracted malarial fever, he returned to the US. Before leaving for this expedition, he secretly married his girlfriend Kathleen Jenkins without the consent and knowledge of his family. In 1909, O'Neill set out as a sea officer as part of a shipping expedition, and between voyages he lived an existence bordering on poverty. He traveled widely from Buenos Aires to Liverpool and to New York City, and these experiences offered good inspiration for the sea plays he wrote later. 1912, he suffered a divorce, so that was a tough year for him. It was not a very productive year in his life. There was a failed attempt at journalism and also a diagnosis of tuberculosis, and he spent a lot of time in saloons drinking profusely, and all this it was like one of those bleak periods in his life. In 1914, he attended a workshop at Harvard where he studied literature and the use of dialect in Irish plays along with writing scenarios. He joined the Provincetown Theatre Company, which was formed by a group of like-minded artists to feature their own plays, and it was at this time that his Bound East for Cardiff was accepted, and it was a success. The play was light on plot, but progressive in dialogues, as it introduced the use of dialects into American drama. We have to remember that he was not an overtly political writer. You are not going to find traces of politics in his works. At the same time, some of his close friends were communists. For example, the founder of the US Communist Party, John Reed, was one of those people, and O'Neill was closely associated with John Reed and his wife. In 1918, he married his second, that was his second marriage, and the lady was called Agnes Bolton, who was a writer of short stories and novels, and in 1919 they had a son, Shane. In 1922, it was like Eugene's brother, we have already talked about him, Jamie. He plunged into a life of alcoholism and died in a sanatorium. So, that was another setback for him. He was quite close to his brother, and it was during this time that his mother also died. Now, he wanted to escape from all these. So, Eugene and his family moved to Bermuda, where his daughter Una was born. Una later became an actress, but O'Neill disowned her for marrying, and this is interesting. Una married Charlie Chaplin, the great actor, the comic actor Charlie Chaplin from Hollywood, and Eugene O'Neill disowned her because she was only 18 and Chaplin was much older, and they never reconciled. In 1929, O'Neill got married to Carlotta Monterey. His literary productivity continued in the years that followed. In 1934, he wrote Days Without End, the last of his plays to be produced on Broadway. He suffered a nervous breakdown and a degenerative disease similar to Parkinson's, which made his hands shake. Thus, writing became very difficult, and he couldn't write plays for the next 12 years. In 1937, O'Neill moved to California, and in this period he finally came to terms with the painful aspects of his life, and he wrote his most autobiographical plays such as Long Day's Journey into Night and Moon for the Misbegotten. And that was the end of his literary career. He died in 1953. As most of you must be aware of, O'Neill is a widely awarded playwright. In 1920, he received his first Pulitzer Prize for Beyond the Horizon. In 1922, he won his second Pulitzer for Anna Christie. At the same time, in the same year, he also received the American Academy of Arts and Letters Gold Medal, and he held a membership in the National Institute of Arts and Letters and the Irish Academy of Letters. In 1928 and 57, he won his third and fourth Pulitzer for A Strange Interlude and Long Day's Journey into Night, respectively. In 1936, as already mentioned, he became the only American playwright ever to be awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. Now, coming to his uniqueness and his writing style, in the earlier period, he focused on realism, and we have been talking about realism and the beginning of American theatre and drama. So, we know American playwrights were heavily influenced by realism. At the same time, there was some influence of Europe as well. So, he was a realist with touches of naturalism. He presented the characters and events as realistically as possible, including the colorful ways in which his characters spoke. He was the first to introduce the use of dialect in American plays. When we do Desire Under the Elms, you will understand what I mean by his peculiar dialects, the peculiar dialect used in the play. His plays often employed radical devices and themes which made them epitomes of modernism. You have to remember, he is a modernist. He is writing during the period which is considered the peak of modernism. And of course, he was influenced by the Greeks, like most people who were writing during that period, Strindberg, Freud, of course, and Nietzsche. His plays, at least most of the plays and most of the time, they followed the unities of time, place and action. Though there may be some exceptions, O'Neill often applied his painful life experiences to playwriting and transformed his experiences inside and outside the theatre into characters of shattering psychological depth and realism. He was also one of the pioneers of expressionism on American stage. In Emperor Jones, a 1920 play and one of his most famous plays, he employed expressionistic devices. The production of this play was notable for having an African American lead. Now, the actor Charles Sidney Gilpin was an Afro-American, and this was quite new in American theatre. This was done at O'Neill's insistence and opened the way for African American actors in theatre and musicals. The play draws on events in Haitian history and portrayed the destructive effects of industrialism on humanity. The story is focused on an African American porter who escapes from prison, travels to a Caribbean island and pursues the inhabitants to crown him the emperor. It was originally titled The Silver Bullet. The play was highly successful and was produced in major world capitals including London and Paris. The play brought forth negative effects of racism in US and other countries. So, it sort of put the spotlight on the destructive effect of racism in various countries, especially in America. Now, we have referred to expressionism here and there in our course, and we know that the movement started in Germany. It was a modernist movement which began in painting and poetry, and precursors include people like Strindberg and Edvard Munch, whose Scream is an iconic painting, and also several other playwrights who were writing at this point of time. So, it is considered with inner realities than outer realities, the movement, and in expressionist theatre, actions and dialogues portray life the way one or more characters perceive it, which may be radically different from the way life really is. It developed as a reaction to rapid industrialization and materialism. The exponents of expressionism in American theatre include Elmer Rees, who famously wrote The Edding Machine, Tennessee Williams in Streetcar Named Desire, and of course, O'Neill. O'Neill's another major play is The Hairy Ape. It is again an expressionistic play written in 1922. It is about Yank. The lead character is called Yank, whose job is stocking coal furnaces on a steamer that reduces humans to the level of animals. However, he finds the insult of an upper class woman, Mildred, more painful than his work, than his laborious work. His search for revenge forms the rest of the story. The play highlights again the dehumanizing effects of modern society, in which physical characteristics as well as internal traits demonstrate the effect of industrialism on human beings. O'Neill experimented with language and included a dialect, and this is something that you should make note of. The use of dialect reflecting the exact way the characters talk, even though certain words were too crude for the theatre. Expressionist techniques such as exaggeration of certain features, scenery, events, or even music is used to present the internal reality, the mindscape of the characters. The Greek influence is perceptible in Morning Becomes Electra, the 1931 play. It's one of his most complex and ambitious works. It's a trilogy of 3 plays, The Homecoming, The Hunted, and The Haunted. O'Neill drew inspiration from the ancient Greek tragedy format and also contemporary Freudian psychology and American history. He intended to create a modern psychological drama using a plot from Greek tragedy, for which he chose the myth of Aristea. The play includes the dark theme of a kind of love that daughters feel for their fathers and subsequent hatred they feel for their mothers. And then came The Iceman Cometh in 1939. The title is taken from a joke the major character Hickey likes to tell about his wife, that he cheats on him with the Iceman, and symbolically it means much more. The play begins with extensive stage directions, including very precise physical descriptions for each characters. The play had several repetitions, like the recurring excuses, poor choices and dreams that made up the characters' lives, which emphasized the patterns that the characters are unable to escape. In Moon for the Misbegotten, again he drew on his life experiences. Is one of his more autobiographical plays, and his expression of love for his older brother Jamie. It's a 1943 play, and it's about a farmer and his daughter who are masters at comic deception, whether they are deceiving their landlord, a wealthy neighbor, or each other. It forms, and that forms the crux of the plot. This play is notable for its balance of comedic and tragic elements, and is set in the period after a long day's journey into night. It almost like picks up where the earlier play left off. So, again this play takes place within a 24-hour period from noon until the dawn of the next day, the following day. So, again observe the unity of time at least. It's set in an impoverished New England farmhouse. The interactions between characters are comic in the first act, but increasingly become tragic. One problem for the theatrical producers was the character of Josie. It was difficult to cast the character in the 1940s when young actresses were expected to reflect conventional notions of female attractiveness. But this play requires an exceptionally large woman. So, that was a problem. We have to understand that casting may become a huge problem when dramatists or playwrights use a certain kinds of characters. Now, coming to his Long Day's Journey into Night, this is his most autobiographical play. There are 4 members of an Irish American family, and they blame the fate as well as each other for what went wrong in their lives. Yet they love each other even as they exchange hurtful words. The tyrants, that is what they are called, face similar challenges that the O'Neills had faced. O'Neill never wanted the play to be published or produced until 25 years after his death, though his wife chose to release it just 3 years later. The entire play takes place in a summer house like the one where the O'Neills spend their summer. The time span of the play was 24 hours and the setting is a single place, so again observance of unities. As the title suggests, the play involves a movement from light into darkness, both figuratively and literally. It begins in the morning and ends at night. The characters frequently retreat into denial, continually referring to dark memories that affect their present and cast clouds on their future. And as already discussed, this play won him the 4th Pulitzer Prize. So, now what could be his legacy of such a wide ranging and a playwright who had such a long span of successful career? So, you have to know that he has had a far reaching influence on American dramaturgy. For a long time, everyone emerged out of the shadows of O'Neill. He was a member of the American Theatre Hall of Fame, and interestingly, Jack Nicholson portrayed O'Neill in the 1981 film called Reds, which is a movie about the life of John Reed, the founder of the Communist Party in America. Eugene O'Neill Award is Sweden's finest dramatic award for the stage actors, and O'Neill's legacy lives on, especially in the way he one, his use of expressionism on American stage, and also the way he portrayed family relationships, which was such an and which remains so important in most American dramaturgy till date. So, here are the references. Please look at the references here, and thank you very much. In our next class, we will start with Desire Under the Elms. So, please ensure that you have your text, because we are going to do a textual reading like we do for all our plays. So, we will be doing a discussion as well as textual reading of the play as well. So, kindly be ready with your text of Desire Under the Elms.